Tonight on America's Dumbest Criminals. It's not just what this guy's doing that's crazy, it's where he's doing it. Get the cold hard facts on the nutty buddy behind the wheel of this ice cream truck. And get the buzz from a stoner whose credibility goes up in smoke. Don't move, don't inhale, and don't touch that dial. We've got the dope on the dopes who make up America's Dumbest Criminals.
Delta 1566, give me a call on your primary.
Now, welcome your hosts for ABC, Daniel Butler and Debbie Allen.
Hey, great to have you ride along with us today.
Well, I see you brought along a treat for the road.
Yeah, the ice cream man was just here. You want a bite?
Oh, no thanks.
Huh?
No thanks.
You sure?
And you better be careful because I hope that suit's made of Teflon. I've seen you eat.
Or cold.
Well, ice cream generally is,
Whoa.
Daniel.
Oh, cream free.
Oh, you ate it too fast. Daniel? I think I'll just enjoy this peaceful moment. And while I am, here's the story of a thief who steals an ice cream truck, which leads to a sticky situation caught on camera.
The ice cream truck driver claims he was a victim. I think he pulled up thinking it was going to be like a regular deal, like I'm going to sell this guy a snow cone, and the next thing he knows, he's being ice cream jacked, so to speak. I mean, the long and short of it is, somehow he says he was taken hostage by a man who had a gun, though I don't believe he ever saw the gun, and made him drive all around the neighborhood with the bells ringing, giving out free ice cream to people. Even, he says, allegedly was made to smoke crack. He said he was in fear of his life.
Yeah, he says, I'm gonna kill you if you don't smoke it,
Even when the perpetrator, the bad guy, left the ice cream truck and went up to talk with friends about crack deals and everything else, where it seems like to most of us he'd have a clear way to get away, he said he was in fear for his life and he couldn't go. I guess the other guy claims that they were in cahoots with one another. It's his word versus the other guy's word. And I think where police are skeptical is when the guy claims, the ice cream truck driver claims, that the alleged bad guy made him smoke crack. Because police say, hey, no crack dealer in the world is going to share their crack with anybody, not even an ice cream truck driver. So that story's not flying for me.
Okay, well, that was a real treat.
Now we turn to a man who was on the run with a canine unit on his trail.
Yep, he thought he could outsmart the dog, but mentally speaking, the pooch clearly had the upper paw.
We take you to Ocala, Florida to find something to remember me by.
The bike guys tried to stop a vehicle for a traffic infraction, and when they did, the person that was driving led him on a little chase, and he finally stopped and he got out and ran on foot, and they called me to try to do a track with the dog. We finally found him in between two houses. Checked with my flashlight and found the person that we were looking for huddled up in a little ball, and he didn't have any clothes on. He said afterwards that he thought if he took all of his clothes off that the dog wouldn't be able to smell him.
Drugs do strange things to the mind.
Oh, yeah. I knew a guy in college. He stared at a lava lamp for 2 hours and swore he'd watched the movie The Blob.
Well, we've got the story of a freaked out teenager who adds a smashing new twist to the concept of home theater. Take a look.
Got dispatched to an accident where a car had run through a chain link fence across the lawn and crashed into a house. And I pulled up on the scene, and sure enough, the car's still sitting there, and I walk up to it, and the kid is still sitting behind the wheel, and he's just frozen. And he's staring at the side of this house, and he's laughing and giggling into himself. I take him out of the car, and I handcuff him, and he's high, he's drunk. And I put him in the front seat of my car, and I'm talking to him, and I explain to him that he's under arrest, and he won't believe me, he's so high. I show him my badge and say, you know me, I've arrested you before, and he laughs and giggles, and he thinks we're at a drive-in movie. He'd taken some hallucinogenics, and he just keeps laughing and giggling. They have another cop show up to check on me because they haven't heard from me. And when his red lights come through the window, this kid says, oh my gosh, the cops are here, and he starts to get nervous. Finally, something registers that he's in trouble, even though he's handcuffed, and he realizes there's a cop outside the car. So he tells me, "Get my drugs out of my sock, get my drugs out of my sock." So I reach down, and inside his sock, there's a big wad of dope, and I pull it out, you know, and I go back and say, you know, "Hey, I'm a cop too," and he laughs and says, "No, just be cool." So the other cop comes up and taps on the window to check on me, and I roll down the window and asks me if everything's okay, and I said, "Yeah, everything's fine." And he takes off, and this kid still doesn't get it. He says, "Oh, you did that good, man. You really threw that cop off. He didn't know he had drugs or anything." And he never did get the fact that I was a cop. He was so high until later on. He just thought he couldn't move his hands because he was so stoned, and that we were sitting at a drive-in movie. But the movie had a bad end for him, needless to say.
In California, animals are banned from mating publicly within 1,500 feet of a tavern, school, or place of worship.
And I don't know about you, but I always feel just a little bit queasy when I place my car keys in the hand of a parking valet, especially when I hear squealing tires just after my car is driven out of sight. Well, tonight we found a story of something that's a lot worse and a little better than that scenario. It's a new twist on America's dumbest excuses.
We had a gentleman that had just been released from the county jail, paced back and forth in front of a guard that was there, and then kept naming people and talking about how he needed a ride to get to work. And just by luck, some guy runs in to do some business and leaves his car unattended running. He jumps in it and takes off. So the next thing we know, the guy's reporting his car stolen. We had a pretty good idea who might be responsible because he's the only person hanging around the jail. Everybody else that had been released left. Well, I did a few phone calls and finally got a hold of him at work and told him he needed to come in for an interview. Well, I get the individual in and he sits down and the first thing he says is that he didn't do it. He took a bus home. And I informed him at 3:30 we don't have buses running in Clayton. And with that, he basically admitted to taking the car, and he then stated that he was upset that he had done it, he was remorseful. He decided to park the car at a gas station where it was well lit and it would be protected so nobody else stole the car. And he also filled it with a tank of gas for the people and then went into the store and called them to make sure they could come get their car. And at the end of the interview, he reiterated and again wrote in his confession that he had filled it with a tank of gas and left it in a lit area so it wouldn't get stolen again. And also made mention of the fact that he should have stuck with his bus story.
Mark Twain once said, "Man is the only animal that blushes, nor needs to." There's an avalanche of embarrassment about to descend upon a poor guy captured on camera one wintry day in Bellwood, Illinois. See for yourself.
This SWAT team came up empty-handed when they searched a neighborhood for a suspect. But they can't say that they wasted a drive because they got to see this. Ouch. Oh. Ooh. Well, since 10 officers of the law witnessed his little oopsie, the driver of the Snowplow figured he'd better pile out and see if he could set things straight. So that's just what he does. Sheepishly, he returns to the scene of the crime. Okay, here he goes. Straighten, straighten. That's close enough for government work.
You ever watch a press conference for a politician or a big company? They usually choose a spokesperson who's articulate, poised, and well-groomed. Well, judging from the teenager who spoke on behalf of his partying buds, standards are a little more, shall we say, relaxed.
Well, my partner and I got a call to a loud party disturbance call, and this is a house that we're very familiar with. We go to it several times a week. The drug usage is high, the minor consumption of alcohol is high. So anyway, my partner got up there and he said he had some kids scattering and running and called for more officers to show up. As we show up, they send their party spokesman out to talk to us. His name's Leon. He comes over to us and he wants to know why we're there harassing the party. And I said, well, you know, we're here for the drug use. And I asked him, I said, do you have any drugs on you? Well, absolutely not, officer. I don't use any drugs. And he asked me the question. He said, if you intend to imply that I use marijuana, sir, you're wrong. Well, I kind of looked at my partner and he looked back at me and we smiled and grinned a little bit because the whole time, well, Leon had been taking hits off his marijuana cigarette while we were interviewing.
Recently, one of our local convenience stores was robbed. Well, the individual had his girlfriend stop at a side street right next to the convenience store, drop him off. He proceeded to go into the convenience store and had to pass the payphones, which are located outside this convenience store. And a friend of his was on the telephone. As he's coming up to the convenience store, he stopped to talk to this friend that was talking on the telephone.
All right, have a good one. All right.
The individual went inside the convenience store, robbed the convenience store, come back out of the store, stopped and talked to his friend again, and then went around the corner and got back in the vehicle that his girlfriend had dropped him off in. We got the call that there was an armed robbery. Very, very easy to find this individual. All we had to do was just ask the gentleman that was on the telephone. He said, yes, I know that's the individual that robbed the place. I just saw him. He's a friend of mine. He lives at this address. And we went directly to the address and located this individual.
When traveling, the crew of ADC eats at Tony Roma's. Tony Roma's, over 200 locations worldwide.
And now, for a man who almost does as much for news as Marv Albert did for lingerie, here's Daniel with ABC Headlines.
A research laboratory in Pennsylvania found a great way to cut costs in conducting environmental studies for its 415 former clients. They made up all the test results. In fact, the company didn't even own all the equipment required to conduct the studies. When the bilked clients and the EPA discovered that reports were routinely falsified and hazardous materials were disposed of improperly, they grew dangerously testy. Marriages, you know, are supposed to be for better or for worse, but one in Illinois got off to a rock-bottom start. Upon entering the courthouse to get married, the groom was discovered to be carrying marijuana. But the judge, not wanting to stand in the way of true love, presided over the marriage ceremony. Then he sentenced the groom on drug charges. No word on how the happy honeymoon's going now. 3 men were arrested in San Francisco after they pelted the city's mayor in the face with pies as he delivered a speech. Although these 3 stooges claimed they were merely protesting the mayor's policy on homelessness, the prosecuting attorney is pursuing charges of misdemeanor assault and battery in hopes that they will get their just deserves. And that closes the file on ABC Headlines. News ripped from somewhere near the back of your local newspaper. Debbie?
Billy Crystal once explained the difference between a class clown and a class comedian. He said that a class clown was the guy who would race across the school building naked. The class comedian was the one who convinced him that it was a great idea. Well, send in the clown for this week's special delivery.
Naked guy comes into the police department.
He'd been partying with his buddies all day.
Naked.
Buck naked.
Toe to head.
Walks up to the front desk.
Flashes everybody.
Yeah, he shook just like that.
And runs out the front door. He gets into a car, and we have cameras around the police department. The dispatcher, as vigilant as she was, zoomed in on it.
The license plate.
No, not that. The license plate.
His friends got him to come in and shake his things, and he did all that.
It was a dare. He did it on a bet. They had been drinking that night. They didn't believe he'd go in and do it. Well, he did.
They go over to the house. They summons the guy.
We didn't actually physically arrest him. We gave him a $68 ticket if he had the to do that. Run into a police department naked. We cut him a little break. No pun intended, little break.
While we're exposing the naked truth, we streak from Manchester, Connecticut to Jacksonville, Florida, where we find an officer who concentrates on the little details to make sure he gets his man. Take a peek.
Toward the end of December, 1st of January, at the beaches, it was extremely cold. There was wind blowing off the ocean. There was hardly anyone on the streets because it was so cold. And somewhere around 1:30, 2 o'clock, the dispatcher gives us a call of a streaker. It's a white male, and he's wearing a stocking mask. Well, another police officer who I work with always has to question for a little bit more information whenever he gets sent on a call. And this particular incident, after HQ told us that we were to look for a naked white male wearing a stocking mask, the officer came up on the air and says, "What color is that mask?"
Now, let's look back at one of ADC's greatest hits.
And now, actual surveillance cam footage from the dashboard of a trooper's car. It's a brush with death we call citizen's arrest. This trooper just pulled over a car for a minor traffic violation on an interstate highway. As he's ticketing the vehicle, a pickup truck loses control. The pickup truck brushed the trooper's left hip. The rearview mirror slapped the trooper in the left shoulder, but the trooper is not seriously hurt. The pickup truck did not slow down or stop. He fled the scene of the accident. The people who had been stopped for the traffic violation were concerned about the trooper's safety, but he was fine and back in his car within moments, in pursuit of the dummy in the pickup. Fortunately, a citizen driving on the interstate who saw the whole thing also gave pursuit. Moments later, he had made a citizen's arrest. This driver was dangerously dumb.
In Jonesboro, Arkansas, it's illegal to say, "Oh boy."
I overheard radio traffic. The gentleman had been electrocuted.
This gentleman used an incredible poor judgment in what he attempted to do.
Drank about 5 or 6 beers and then decided that he was going to hook his power back up to his residence.
Had taken an aluminum ladder, leaned it up on an energized pole.
Once he got to the top of the aluminum ladder, he still couldn't reach the transformer, so he shimmied his way on up the power pole.
And sat on top of the disconnected transformer.
Took a piece of thin copper wire and attempted to use a jumper wire from transformer to the hotline, and when he did, he got the shock of his life. He received about 7,620 volts of electricity.
Hitting the ground possibly restarted his heart.
I can just see a warning on the side of beer cans from now on. Playing with power lines and drinking is not real good to your health.
It's not only an amazingly dumb thing for him to do, he's also an amazingly fortunate person to still be alive.
Farmers put blinders on their mules to keep them from getting distracted from the single purpose of moving straight ahead.
Well, tonight we find a man who plows into problems because his single vision is a bit too literal.
Yeah, strange but true. It's tonight's cycloptic scenario for We're Not Making This Up.
We had a juvenile. He was working at a gas station and had been terminated for one reason or another. It's a small community. Everybody in town knew him, knew the people that worked there. This individual was clinically blind in one of his eyes. About 3 months after his termination, the place was robbed. Surveillance tape was taken from the scene. We put the videotape in our machine. We noticed that the individual that was committing the armed robbery had taken a knit cap and cut out one eye. It wasn't too hard to narrow it down to a past employee with limited sight in one eye. He was so concentrated on the fact that he was going to rob the place and needed to see out that one eye, he didn't take the time to think it might look good if he cut out the other eye. I mean, we might not have caught him quite so fast. He thought he was actually being smarter than your average robber and hiding more of his face by only cutting out one eye.
Well, I hope that we've all learned something tonight.
Well, yeah, sure. We learned 2 eye holes are better than 1.
Oh, I hope we learned more than that.
Well, we also learned if you run around naked, you end up on our show.
Yeah, the crook's on our show, the cop's on NYPD Blue.
Yeah, I think you're right about both there. And you know what else I think?
What's that?
I think I'll come back next week for more Dimwits on the Loose.
Well, if you come back, there's guaranteed to be one dimwit on the list. Sorry.
He's doing the Kathy
And I
Lee
hope you
thing.
folks at home will join us, too.
Well, and if you've got a lead on a story or you just can't wait till next week for more state-of-the-art stupidity, visit our website at www.dumbcrimes.com.
Thanks again for tuning in. And if you've had fun, why not tell a friend?
Friends don't let friends watch infomercials. And we also want to express our special thanks for the officers who helped us out tonight. They're representative of thousands of people in law enforcement who keep the bad guys at bay. We appreciate everything you do.
As always, we hope that we've all learned from others' mistakes.
But if you haven't, we just might see you next week on America's Dumbest Criminals.
Goodbye.